In the previous lessons, we've set up the solution quite nicely by thinking about how we'll retrieve a customer contract from a data store. I'm not sure we're finished thinking about contracts per se just yet, but at least we know we can get a valid contract, we can get an expired contract, and then we can throw an exception whenever an invalid contract is requested. So we've got those bases covered, and now it's time to focus on the core of the user story, which always was creating an order. So we're going to need to create an empty order and add order items to the order in the form of parts. Parts are associated with locations, but we don't know much about locations just yet. This user story is pretty narrowly scoped, and that's a good thing. Later we'll tackle more features, and I'm sure we'll have to account for locations at that time. But for now, what I want to do is begin with unit tests around creating an order. So I think what I'm going to do is start by what we ended up doing with contracts, namely that I'm going to create an order service that will be responsible for creating new orders or retrieving orders from the persistence layer. So what I want to do is create a method called create order, and that method will accept a contract as the input parameter. So that create order method will be responsible for checking the expiration date. And if that expiration date is indeed expired, it's in the past, then we're not going to let it create an order. We'll probably just throw an exception. Could not create order because invalid date or expired date exception. I don't know. We'll shorten that a little bit. Okay, but that's essentially what we're going to do. But in creating an order should also involve creating a new order ID. Now, to my knowledge, there's no restriction on the order IDs the way that there was a restriction on contract IDs, if you'll recall. So I'm simply going to create a GUID and use that. Now, if I really wanted to be careful, I'd check to ensure that the GUID is not already in the database. Now, I'm just going to raise that as a potential issue to my project manager and to the team whenever we get into that part of building the application. Otherwise, I'm going to ignore that possibility for now and assume that globally unique is indeed globally unique. Based on the number of orders that we know Acme works through, that's an acceptably small risk. We're not working with billions of orders. We're working with 2 or 3 a day, okay, in this particular system. All right, so the first order of business then is to create a new unit test. So I'm going to right-click on the project. Here we go. Right-click and select Add a New Item. And you know how I love the basic unit test template. There are easier and quicker ways to do this, but let's just follow this for now. And what we're going to create is an order service test.cs. Okay, very good. What I'm going to do is let's rename this sample test method. And I'll rename it create order, since that is the method under test. And what state will it be in? The state will be we're passing a valid contract into the create order method. And then finally, what do we expect back? What's the expectation? Is that it'll create a new order. Let's say creates new order. Okay, great. Now let's think about the kinds of things that we'll need to do. I know I don't need to do this, but this will give us a little outline of what comes next. So in order to create a new order, we know we're going to need a contract. And in order to create a contract, we need a contract service. So it's almost like we've got to repeat everything that we've done before in the contract service right here. Now, I guess what I'll start out doing is this and then work from there. So I know I'm going to need an order service. That's the system under test, or the method under test. So we'll create a new instance of order service. And I'm going to use the escape key on my keyboard. If you are fighting IntelliSense, what you can do is whenever you see IntelliSense up and you don't want it to type out the next word, which it thinks will be test, we haven't created the order service class yet. So IntelliSense is trying to help us out because we've named something order service test, but we don't want that here. So I'm going to hit the escape key on my keyboard, and that will get rid of IntelliSense and allow me to type in what I want to type in. All right, so escape key on the keyboard will get rid of IntelliSense, stop it from trying to auto type out everything that I'm I'm currently working on. So that's a little tiny tip there. Okay, so I have an order service. What I really need is a contract. So how do I get a contract? I create a contract service. So var contract service equals new contract service, and oh no, I need a contract repository. I'll go ahead and type this in like so. Now, we obviously don't have that in our project, and that prompts me to think that what I really need to do is pull over some of that code from the contract service test that we worked on the previous lessons. Now, there's probably a better way to do this, to take some of this initialization code that's common to all my unit tests and put it in a single spot that could be shared across multiple unit tests. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I may need to go back to the drawing board and figure that out for a future video. For now, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste from the old unit test. I'm just going to grab, I think I need most of this, because not only am I going to test this with a valid contract ID, I'm going to also test it with an expired contract ID. So I need most of this initialize. I'm going to need the auto mapper. I'm going to need the creation of the contract service like we did there in line number 47. So again, ideally I wouldn't be copying and pasting this. There's probably a better way. I'll probably figure that out off camera and then come back and we'll do it a little bit later. Okay. So let's go back to the order service, and we'll go right above our test method and just paste all this in. Of course, we're going to need to resolve a bunch of these missing using statements, and ReSharper is eager to help us out in that regard. So I'm just going to go ahead and make some selections here, and well, it made quick work of all that. Very good. Now, what I know I don't need is an invalid contract ID. We won't be passing one in. We won't get that far, so we're not going to use that, because what we need is a contract, not just an ID. All right. Hopefully that made sense. All right. So at any rate, we have a contract service created, and we only did that so that we get and create a contract. So contract service.get by ID. And we're going to pass in a valid contract ID. Remember, that is our that's our const that we created right here. All right, good. And then in the act, what we'll do is we need to create a new order. So var new order equals order service, this order service that we have not created yet. What I anticipate, what I want to do is call the create order method. Again, it doesn't exist yet. We'll create it eventually. And I want to pass in this contract. And now I'm going to do a bunch of assertions. So what are the kinds of things that I can check to make sure that a new order was successfully created? Well, I'm going to want to check the order ID. Make sure that it's valid, I guess. I'll come back to that a little bit. I need a status, because one of the requirements was that a new order would have a status of new until the point when we are finished adding order items, at which point I think it was open was the status we wanted to change it to. We'll want to make sure that, that it has order items. So orders will have an associated collection of order items, and we'll call that property on the order class order items, and we'll make sure that it has the correct type and that it's been newed up and all that good stuff. So here we go. Let's start this way, and then we might have to refactor this once we think about it a little bit more. So the first thing we'll do is to make sure that what we get back, what new order is actually a type of the order class. Of course, we don't have an order class just yet, but that's ultimately what we're aiming for right there. All right, now we'll want to test the properties of the new order, and there's only a handful of properties, or 2 properties right now, or 3. There's the order ID, the status, and the order items collection. So let's, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this ultimately, but I'll start out here. I'll say r equal the new order dot order ID is equal to some order ID that I pass in, I don't know. I'll probably maybe make a const out of that. We'll come back to that a little bit. We'll think about it a little bit more. This one's easy rather. New order dot status, and I would expect that to be equal to a new status. Now here again, I'm expecting that I'm going to make a const out of that, a constant. So we can actually just go up here to the top and actually do that part right now. Private const string new status equals new. And that doesn't look quite right either. I'll probably come back and refactor that out and create an enumeration for the different order statuses. But for right now, we'll just use it as a string of new. I just want to get this thing to kind of take shape, and then we can mold it into the right position, I guess you could say. All right, so now it recognizes our new constant. That's awesome. And then finally, what I want to do is check that third property, which I know I want to make sure that new order has an order items collection, and that order items collection is a type of. And I've got some choices here what I can make this. Typically, I like to use a generic list of order item. Now, you can see that we need to add a using statement to get the generic list. And when I hit the correct keyboard combination for ReSharper, it will add this using statement right here, using system collections.generic. Awesome. Okay, so we're off to a good start. We know we have things we need to implement. The one thing that kind of bugs me here is this order ID. Who's going to generate it? How am I going to test it? Kind of separating it here out into its own line. You know, originally I thought maybe I would use Fake It Easy to, and then I could tell Fake It Easy whenever we're creating a new order to give it this order ID. I guess that would work, but I'm thinking maybe I can make this a little bit simpler. I don't really need to know that it is a specific order ID. I just need to know that it's a GUID, it's a valid GUID that's being generated. So to do that, I'm going to concoct a little plan here. I'm going to use a built-in GUID function. So I'm going to do assert.isTrue, and I'm going to call GUID.tryParse. And what that'll do is I'm going to pass in the new order.order ID, and what I want to make sure to get out of it is out GUID ID. And I don't really care what the value of GUID ID is, or GUID out rather is. The only reason I'm doing this is to satisfy tryParse, but tryParse will tell me if order ID is in fact a real GUID or not. Okay? I still don't know how all this is going to work, but we'll just go on for now like that. May have to come back to that. Okay, but that's the kind of angst that I go through, is trying to figure out what's the right way to test this. All right, so moving on, let's go ahead and implement the order class, because that's ultimately what we're trying to get at, and then we'll write create order. So this is easy. I can add a new class, and it'll be called order. And here, let's just do prop tab string. Nope, that's not quite right. Order ID, and then public string status get set, and then a list of order item, alt enter. I'm going to create a new class called order item. So class order item, let's go ahead and we're going to move to another file to match the type name. So again, this is a ReSharper function, but essentially what it's doing here, it's automating a few steps. I didn't have to go and go to right click, add new item, All I did was it saw that I needed a new class. It says, do you want me to create a new type for you? I said yes. Then I created the new order class in the same file. It said, hey, do you want us to move that to a whole different file? And I said yes. So it automated several steps. I love ReSharper. And you'll see that a lot of books and blogs reference ReSharper as a good way to do refactoring, especially in a test-driven or domain-driven design context. I'll try not to rely on those features so much. Unfortunately, it's just become part of my vocabulary while I'm typing, and it was part of this virtual machine that I'm recording from here as I'm creating these videos. But you need to be aware of just a handful of third-party tools that are valuable to people on the job. I've seen job descriptions where they're looking for people with ReSharper experience. I think we'll create a mini series around it, even though it's a third-party tool. I think the C# version by itself is like $100. Personally, I think it's well worth it, but you'll have to make those decisions on your own. At any rate, it just automated, in this case, a very simple situation of just creating a new class for me and putting it in a different file. That's all it did. All right, so let's move on. Let's not get bogged down in that necessarily. So we have these public properties, and here I'm also going to want to make this public, and I'm going to want to go in the constructor for order. I want to make sure to create a new instance of order items. So we'll do new list of order item. Yeah, I've got all kinds of problems here. I got out of my sync. Okay. There we go. That'll do it. All right, so that should satisfy order. And if we look back at our order service test, now our at some point we'll see that some of these reds will go away once we get back, once we create this create order and we know that it will return a type of order. All right, so let's go and do that now. Let's create a new order service in our domain layer. So let's right click and select add a new class, and this will be called order service. And we'll make it a public class. We need one method. And whenever somebody wants a new order, we're going to give them back. And again, here's where the red-green refactor comes in. I'm just going to do just enough to get this to work. So I'm going to create a new GUID, and I'll toString it. Or I think I'll toString it. And then I'm going to set the status equal to new. So again, just enough to get this to work, and I'm going to return order. All right. All right, so let's run our unit test now. Let's see. Okay, can't see order item. Where is order item at? I think it's here. We definitely have it. So why can't it see order item? Oh, because I spelled it wrong. There you go. Now it sees it. Now I can run all. And it looks like they all worked. Excellent. Now there's some things here that I don't quite like about what we've done so far. The first of which is that I'm not really crazy about the string situation here. So what I'm going to do is go back into my domain layer, and I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this enums, and I'm going to add a new contract status. Or is that an order status? I think that should be an order status. All right, so new item class order status. And actually what we're going to do is go public enum order status. There we go. And we'll just say new and open, and there will probably be more later, but for right now that's all we need. Great. And so when we go back to the order, we don't want it to be a string anymore. We want it to be a contract status. Now it is not going to find it because we are missing the enum order status. So let's just add it manually here. Using acme.maintenance.domain.enums. There we go. And now it should find it. Oh, not contract status. That's part of the problem. I keep wanting to call it contract status and order status. There we go. Great. And so now let's go back into our order service, and no longer do we want to set it equal to a string. What we want is contract status. Dang it. Order status. Help me, help me. Come on. We want to set it to new. There we go. That's much better. Okay. And then what we want to do is go back to our test, and I'm going to actually get rid of this. I don't need that anymore. Now that we're going to use order status new. Great. Okay, so I think that's better. Let's go ahead and test that. All right, so we've got red, we got green, and now we're refactoring, but are we done refactoring yet? Well, we are for this video. I think there's a couple of other things we want to check out here and see how they work, but for the moment, things are working. We've got a new order. It doesn't do a whole lot. We'll have to improve on that in the coming videos. So we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.